Have you ever stepped outside at night? No phone, no noise, just you, and suddenly felt like you were meeting yourself for the first time. In a world addicted to stimulation, where even silence makes us anxious and solitude feels like exile, we've forgotten something ancient and powerful. We've forgotten that stillness is not emptiness. Welcome to today's journey. Silence and solitude, the forgotten tools of self-discovery. Together, we'll walk the quiet path trodden by sages, philosophers, monks, and mystics. From Marcus Aurelius in his tent to Thoreau by his pond, they discovered that some truths are only whispered in silence and only revealed in solitude. This isn't about being alone, it's about being with yourself. And in that space, something beautiful begins. I'll take this in segments to help it sink in deeply. Segment 1. The noise we don't notice. Let's begin with a hard truth. Not a convenient truth, not a feel-good one, but one that sits heavy and real. Most of us, we don't actually fear silence. What we really fear is what we might hear in it. You see, silence has a way of unmasking things. It doesn't rush, it doesn't distract, it doesn't soothe us with noise. It just waits, patiently, until everything else quiets down, and then it speaks. Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Let that sink in for a moment. The inability to just sit quietly, alone, not scrolling, not refreshing, not escaping, just being. Now think about the world we live in. Modern life is a blur, a flashing reel of notifications, news feeds, podcasts, playlists, ads, small talk, shallow scrolls, noise everywhere. It's on our wrists, in our pockets, in our cars, in our beds. We wake up to it. We fall asleep to it. We wrap ourselves in it like armor. But here's the thing. We're not just surrounded by noise. We're saturated in it. And yet, somehow, we're starved for meaning. Because that constant chatter, the outer noise, and the inner one, it's like fog, thick and disorienting. It blurs the edges of who we are. It clouds our view of what matters. It mutes the subtle whispers of our soul, the ones that don't shout, but speak truth. And in that fog, we forget. We forget who we are. We forget what we need. We forget what matters. But here's the invitation. What if we stopped running from silence? What if, instead of fearing what we might find there, we leans in? What might we hear in the stillness? What truths have been waiting patiently beneath all the noise? Not every answer lives in silence, but many of the right questions do. Segment 2. Solitude is not loneliness. There's a myth we need to shatter, a quiet, persistent myth that whispers in modern ears that solitude is the same as loneliness. But listen closely. It's not. Loneliness, that's the ache of absence. It's the hollow echo when connection is missing. It's reaching out and finding no hand to hold, no voice to answer. It is the pain of being disconnected from others, even, at times, when we're surrounded by people. But solitude is something entirely different. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of something deeper. It is the power, the stillness, the strength of being deeply, unapologetically connected to yourself. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus, born a slave, forged into a philosopher, reminded his students again and again, the world outside, it's fleeting. Possessions rust, praise fades, people come and go. But your inner life, that is yours. Yours to build, to nourish, to protect. And history has echoed this truth through the lives of those who dared to go inward. The Buddha sat alone beneath a Bodhi tree, silently facing every fear, every desire, every illusion, until he woke up. Jesus withdrew into the wilderness. 40 days, no crowd, no comfort, only the desert wind and his own soul, wrestling with the divine. Nietzsche climbed into the Alps, not to escape the world, but to see it more clearly. There, surrounded by mountains and silence, he wrote the words that would shake philosophy. Thus spoke Zarathustra. You see, solitude is not isolation. It is not exile. It is not the same as cutting yourself off. Solitude is integration. It's where the noise of the world dims just enough for you to hear the quiet wisdom of your own mind. It's where your thoughts slow down, your heart speaks up, and your soul begins to realign. So the next time you're alone, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't mistake it for emptiness. Let it speak. Let it shape you. Because in solitude, you don't lose the world. You remember who you are within it. Segment 3. Silence is a mirror. Silence, when truly embraced, becomes a mirror. Not the kind that flatters or distorts, but one that reflects what is, without decoration, without noise, without escape. It doesn't perform. It doesn't pretend. It simply waits until you're ready to see. In the quiet, your mind softens. The endless commentary slows. And slowly, subtly, a deeper awareness begins to rise. You stop performing and start revealing. The masks you wear of certainty, of competence, of control, begin to fall. The inner clutter, those swirling thoughts, rehearsed narratives, and borrowed beliefs begin to clear. And what remains? What remains is you, unfiltered, unguarded, unshaped by expectation. Lao Tzu once wrote, "Silence is a source of great strength." And indeed it is. Because silence doesn't flatter, it doesn't negotiate. It won't distract you with applause or approval. No, silence simply invites. It invites you to meet yourself, not as the world sees you, but as you truly are. It's not always gentle. Sometimes, what rises in that stillness is pain. Old regrets may surface. Long-ignored grief may whisper. Confusion may cloud the heart. But these aren't enemies. They are messengers. Parts of you that have been waiting, buried beneath noise, silenced by distraction, are finally asking to be heard, to be honored, to be healed. And if you listen closely, in that same silence, your gifts speak too. The quiet confidence, the clarity beneath the chaos, the compassion you forgot you carried, your purpose, your peace, your power. All of it revealed, not through striving, but through stillness. So step into the silence, not to escape the world, but to return to yourself. Because silence, when welcomed, becomes more than a mirror. It becomes a doorway. Segment 4. The practice of being alone with your mind. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly alone with your own thoughts? I don't mean scrolling through your phone while sitting quietly. I don't mean zoning out in front of the TV. I don't even mean listening to music while you're driving. I mean, no distractions, no noise, just you and your mind. For most people, that idea is unsettling, maybe even terrifying. Because when we strip away all the background noise, when there's no one else's voice, no agenda, no input, what are we left with? Ourselves, unfiltered, uninterrupted, uncomfortable. But for seekers, for those drawn to truth, depth, meaning. That space of stillness is secret. Spending time alone with your own mind is like stepping off a well-lit road and into a dense, ancient forest. At first, you can't see a thing. It's unfamiliar, disorienting, maybe even a little scary. There's no clear path, no signs pointing the way. But if you stay there, if you breathe, if you listen, you begin to notice things. A rustle in the leaves. That's insight. A distant breeze. You might call it intuition. Whispers you never heard before begin to rise from the depths. Because in that silence, the mind finally has room to speak. As the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. There's something profound in that. Because in solitude, we stop performing, we stop reacting, we stop editing ourselves to fit the moment. And what's left is something raw, something real. Your inner world, yes, yours, is vast. It has terrain, topography, mountains of conviction, valleys of doubt, rivers of emotion that run deep and fast, caverns of memory, some lit by wonder, others shadowed by pain. But none of it gets mapped if you never go in. So maybe the real question isn't whether you can handle being alone with your thoughts. It's whether you're willing to explore them. And if you are, if you dare to walk into that forest, you just might find that what seemed like emptiness is actually the beginning of everything. Segment 5. What the ancients taught us. Nearly every philosophical tradition across time and culture holds silence and solitude not as emptiness, but as sacred ground, an inner temple where truth is most clearly heard. Picture the Desert Fathers, early Christian mystics, retreating deep into the Egyptian wilderness. They weren't fleeing the world out of fear, but stepping away from the noise so they might better hear the voice of God. There, in the hush of sand and stone, they discovered a divine presence that speaks not in thunder, but in stillness. In the East, the Taoists taught that the way, the Tao, is not something that can be captured in language or explained through logic. It is a path felt rather than known, sensed rather than spoken. Only in quietude, they said, can one align with the rhythm of the universe. Words are clumsy in the face of such mystery. Stillness is where it reveals itself. The Stoics, too, understood the necessity of inward quiet. Each night, they turned inward with disciplined calm, journaling by lamplight. They reflected on the day with clarity, sorting what was within their control from what was not. In silence, they cultivated strength, choosing reason over reaction and acceptance over anxiety. And then there was Henry David Thoreau, who left behind the clamor of society and walked to the edge of Walden Pond. There, amid rustling trees and mirrored water, he wrote, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." His solitude was not escape, it was a declaration, a homecoming to what was most real. So let us understand this. Silence is not a withdrawal from the world, it is a return to it, cleansed of distraction, rooted in presence. Solitude is not an escape from life, it is an arrival, fully awake, finally here. In that space beyond the noise, something ancient and true begins to speak. And if we are quiet enough, we may just hear it. Segment 6. The benefits. What silence and solitude actually give you. Stillness is not passive. It is not the absence of motion or effort. Stillness is profoundly active, a kind of internal fire, a furnace where clarity is forged, shaped, and strengthened. Silence and solitude are not empty. They are rich, alive, and deeply generative. In the hush of the world, when the noise falls away, something begins to rise. Your truest thoughts, the ones that are often drowned out by the demands and distractions of daily life. In that stillness, clarity begins to form. It emerges slowly, like steam rising from water, giving shape to what you really believe, what you truly value. And it's in that quiet where emotional balance begins to settle in. Not the kind of balance forced by external calm, but the deep-rooted kind that comes when you finally hear what you actually feel. Not what you've been told to feel, not what others expect you to feel, but what is truly, authentically yours. Creative insight, too, thrives in this kind of space. The great breakthroughs rarely happen in front of a screen, under pressure, or amid the noise. They come during quiet walks, in the middle of a shower, or in the moments when you least expect them. Those fragments of time when your mind is still, and your imagination is free to stretch out its limbs. And over time, stillness breeds resilience. Because in solitude, you discover that you can soothe yourself. You can strengthen yourself. You can know yourself. You come to understand that your inner world has structure, texture, power. And once you know how to return to it, how to sit in it, you are no longer at the mercy of everything outside. Solitude is not a void. It is not a hollow absence. It is space. Space to hear your intuition, that soft inner voice that always knows the way. Space to listen to your conscience, even when it's uncomfortable. And space to recognize your own truth, unfiltered, undistorted, undiluted. So when the world feels loud, when everything is rushing forward, remember, stillness is not retreat. It is return. And in that return, there is power. Segment 7. The inner conversation. Meeting the self. Silence invites an ancient conversation. Not one shared with the world, not a dialogue with others, but a deeply intimate exchange with the oldest, most hidden parts of yourself. Carl Jung once spoke of the self, not the ego, not the narrow band of your conscious identity, but something far more complete. The self, in its fullness, holds the mystery of who you truly are. It doesn't use language the way we do in everyday life. It doesn't argue or explain. It whispers in symbols. It moves through images. It reveals itself in dreams. And most often, it arrives clothed in silence. When you stop talking, when you stop thinking, stop scrolling, stop filling every moment with noise, something extraordinary begins to happen. The soul, quiet until now, starts to speak. In that stillness, you begin to hear what's always been there, the quiet pulse beneath the surface, a knowing that doesn't come from logic or opinion, but from something more ancient than thought. This is the birthplace of self-trust, the root of intuition, the soil in which wisdom grows. But be warned, this voice does not demand your attention. It does not shout. It does not beg to be heard. It waits. It waits for your stillness. It waits for your presence. And in that waiting, it offers something sacred, the chance to remember who you are. Segment 8. How to practice silence and solitude in modern life. Let's be practical. You don't need a monastery or a cabin in the woods to find silence. You don't need to escape the world to come back to yourself. Start small. Start where you are. Maybe it's during your morning drive. Instead of the usual playlist or news chatter, you simply turn the radio off. And there it is, a space. Just a few quiet minutes with nothing but the hum of the road and the rhythm of your breath. That's a beginning. That's a micro moment of silence. Or perhaps once a week, you put your phone away. Not forever, not even for a whole day, just for a few hours. You carve out a pocket of time, free from screens and updates and noise. It might feel empty at first, But give it a moment. Emptiness has a way of filling you with something deeper. Try walking outside without headphones. No music, no podcast. Just you and the trees, the wind in the leaves, the crunch of your footsteps. Let the world speak to you, not through a speaker, but through its own quiet language. That too is silence. What if you began your mornings in stillness? Not scrolling, not speaking, just a notebook perhaps, a cup of something warm, the early light. You let your mind wake up gently, instead of colliding with the noise of the day. You might write, you might not. You simply allow space for reflection, for presence. Silent mornings can set the tone for an entire life. And then, when you can, take a day. Just one. Go somewhere alone. It doesn't have to be far or dramatic. A park, a rented room, a quiet corner of your city. Give yourself that time to be with yourself, unhurried, uninterrupted. It doesn't take long for solitude to begin its quiet work. All of these are invitations, small, real, practical ways to create silence on purpose, not to run away from life, but to return to it more fully, more awake, more whole. Because in the quiet, we don't lose ourselves, we find ourselves again. Segment 9. The risk of avoiding stillness. Here's the danger. When we constantly avoid stillness, when we fill every moment with noise, tasks, distractions, to end up living only on the surface of our own lives. It may look full, it may feel busy, but beneath the motion, something essential is missing. We begin to confuse distraction with meaning. We start to believe that movement always equals growth, and that noise somehow brings us closer to others. But that's a dangerous illusion. True growth, real, lasting, inward transformation, doesn't come from constant motion. It doesn't come from endless doing. It comes from within. And growth that doesn't begin within us is ultimately shallow. You can construct an entire life, successful on the outside, full of activity and achievement, and still never truly come home to yourself. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once offered a piercing observation. He said, "The unhappy man is always absent from himself, never present to himself." Think about that for a moment. To be absent from yourself, to drift through the world while never actually inhabiting your own soul. That is the real loss. Not boredom, not stillness, but disconnection from who we are at the deepest level. So the danger is not in the quiet. It's in the avoidance of it. It's in choosing noise over self-awareness, movement over meaning, distraction over depth. And if we were not careful, we might wake up one day and realize we've spent our whole lives being strangers to ourselves. Segment 10. The final word. Coming home. So here's the invitation, spoken gently but firmly. An invitation not to withdraw from life, not to disappear or shrink away from the world and its demands. No, this is something different. This is a call to return not with noise or frenzy, but with a deeper, more grounded presence. A presence that sees, that listens, that feels fully. One that is awake, not just to what's around you, but to what's within you. This is not an urging to reject connection or pull away from others. Quite the opposite. It is an invitation to strengthen those connections, not by reaching outward first, but by finding something solid inside. Because solitude, true solitude, is not a form of separation. It is a way of coming home to yourself. And from that home, from that rooted center, every connection you make becomes more genuine, more alive, more whole. Silence, you see, does not remove you from the world. It does not exile you from experience. Rather, it anchors you. It roots you in yourself. And when you are rooted, when you are no longer drifting, no longer pulled in 1,000 directions. You can show up differently. You can show up with clarity. You can offer compassion. You can move with a quiet, steady power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You've spent enough time running from the stillness, enough time filling every gap, every quiet moment with noise and distraction. Maybe it was easier that way. Maybe it helped you feel in control. But that season is ending. Now, it's time to return, to come back, not with fear, but with openness, with curiosity, with courage. So take a breath, right now. Let it be full, let it be slow. Turn inward, not to escape, but to remember. To remember something simple, something important. You are not lost. You've just been distracted, pulled away by the pace, the pressure, the noise. And the path back, it's not far. It doesn't require you to go anywhere new. It begins right here, in this moment, in silence. If you're drawn to grow not just harder, but wiser and truer, then I invite you to stay connected. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Whatever keeps us linked, because I'll be here, continuing to share, to question, to walk beside you, one meaningful moment at a time.